Hey folks, what do you know about the Salem Witch Trials? This week in my public history practice class at Johns Hopkins, we're going to be going into the public history of the Salem Witch Trials. There's the academic scholarship, of course, produced by people like Emerson, Tad, Baker. There is the popular history, Hocus Pocus. But we are going to look at the public history. This is how audiences come to perceive, come to understand a historical moment, the ideas, the people involved. That might be drawn from academic scholarship, might be pushed by popular media, but it is shaped in terms of all of the stories that they have been told from whatever medium by the Salem Witch Trials of 1692. Now, my students this week, we're going to be talking to a number of different people, a lot of my mutuals, about the nature and scope of these stories. But I actually want to hear from you. We have started this kind of tradition of including you in our course in real time. If public history is about history storytelling as authentically as possible to connect with modern audiences in ways that matter, then you are our main source base, and I love hearing from you. And it leads to some considerably different kinds of findings. Right, we're able to connect with, for example, the public history of Sally Hemings has introduced us to a whole new way of looking at this, particularly by including the thoughts and impressions of so many of you, which includes so many of Sally's descendants, and also seeing the pushback from others. We've covered the public history of Pocahontas. We've covered the public history of slavery in the 1619 Project, but now we're focusing on the public history of the Salem Witch Trials. So let me know. What if you think you know about the Salem Witch Trials? What do you know? How did you come to know it? Did you come to know it by visiting Salem and maybe going on a tour, visiting a museum? Did you watch The Crucible or read The Crucible in high school? Is there a little bit of hocus pocus in your background that helps you understand what's going on in Salem? Maybe it's any number of other kinds of versions of it in popular media. But how did those ideas about the Salem Witch Trials get lodged in your brain? Again, in public history practice, we call that the historical imaginative. How does your imagination take all of the sources of information that's lodged in it and form in and of itself a perception, its own narrative about the past in your own present? Now, we also look at what we call the historiographical imaginative, and that is each of those elements that contribute to it. Can that be hocus pocus? Can that be the crucible? Hell yeah. So because it helps shape your interpretation, your understanding, your perception of that event. So I would just love to know about it. How did these ideas, your perceptions, get lodged in your brain? So let's break down the real Salem versus the pop culture version of Salem. And in the middle, what we find is the public history of it, that understanding of the past that is built upon the stories that have been told about it. So share your first memory of learning about the trials and let us know if it's changed since then. This is really important stuff, right? This is about a story that authentically told is one about persecution, is one that requires that we understand the patterns of persecution, and that distorting it helps us avoid seeing the patterns of persecution when fear and hysteria come together and create real harm in a community. And some of this is going to sound familiar to a lot of people today. So we don't have to work. One of the great things about public history, actually, unfortunately, is so great, that we don't have to work hard to find the relevance in our stories. These are stories that tend to be relevant in our lives and are increasingly relevant in the world around us today. What can hysteria, what can fear, how can that develop into hate, which can then develop into persecution and real harm? That is the story of Salem, and we need to unpack both the reality. We need to unpack the mythology, but what I want to know is your understanding of it, your appreciation of it, and what are the sources that you have that have come into your mind that have helped shape your imagination about it. Let me know, and I will share it with my graduate students. I appreciate you being a part of this ride this semester. This is how we practice public history, right? This is about a conversation. This is about sparking engagement, meaningful ones, in which we're able to actually understand how history can be usable in our lives today. So thanks a lot for your contributions.